I'm Clint from Boxco. Thank you all for coming out to our crate demo. For those of you that don't know, I guess y'all were just talking about it, but Box Company does art services in DFW and beyond. We've done shuttles to New York and LA and all around Texas. So we specialize mostly in installation, storage, but we also do custom fabrication and transportation, i.e. shuttles. The fabrication is kind of a newer thing for us within the last year or two. I built out the shop, which we have over down near Malcolm X and Lipscomb, good Latimer area over there. Closer to Fair Park, but still in the Cedars technically. So anyway, y'all should have a handout. If you take away anything from this, this handout's gonna be very vital. As you go through trying to figure out how to create your artwork or anybody else's, there's information in here that's actually kind of difficult to find because there's not a lot of standards in art creating. There's no rule book, there's no guidebook. I have, in all my years of handling art, encountered so many different types and styles of crates and materials. It can be very confusing. But I think today I'll kind of walk you through something that's basic enough to handle any kind of artwork. Hopefully basic enough and simple to understand. So I'm going to start reading from this handout. So on page 2, which is of our handout, we have a nice little drawing here. This is just a schematic that I thought was really nice. But this handout details several different ways to imagine, design, and construct custom wood crates for artworks. This is a supplement to the demo. We're going to cover the basics, and it's not really exhaustive of every crate type. I mean, there's crates that have springs in them. I'm not going to do that, and I hope you don't ever have to deal with that. But we are just going to look through basic crate types, materials, and how to assemble it. So the basic materials that I always use when I'm building crates is half-inch plywood. We're using 3/8 today because that's the scrap I had in the shop. Same basic principle. The heavier you go in plywood, the heavier your crate's going to be. You're going to get charged more for shipping and shuttling, and it might not be necessary, depending on what you're crating, of course. So half-inch plywood, that can be birch, OSB, which I never recommend, but you'll see a lot of museums using it as like kind of a tear-down crate, like a one-way crate. MDO, which is kind of top of the line. It's a plywood that has an MDF type veneer on the surface, and that's like supposedly really weatherproof when you paint it or prime it. I use sanded ply. Like I go to Lowe's or Home Depot and I just buy half-inch sanded ply. It's cheaper than birch. It's the cheapest kind of like AA quality plywood you're gonna find. I think it's about $45 a 4x8 sheet. Pine wood slatting. So all crates have a kind of face, like a sheet, and then they have a frame that looks a bit like a window. Often they will have interior supports as well. This is a very small, basic, rudimentary version of that. So here we have our plywood face, and this is cut out to the dimension. This is fictional, hypothetical. This is cut out to the dimension of a foam piece that protects your artwork. This is what I call stiles or framing. Now this is usually made out of some kind of solid core lumber, poplar or pine. It's important to remember, and I have it listed on here several times, if you're shipping international, you cannot use lumber unless you get a stamp from a certified inspector proving that it's been kiln dried to international specs. One way around that is you build everything out of plywood. So instead of using pine or poplar to reinforce your panel, you just use plywood and you rip it down to your specs, which are usually, and we'll go through this as we build, it's usually about 1/3 or so or maybe even 1/4 of your whole panel. Think of this as a wall. It's a little mini wall. 4x4 fir or pine. That's usually for putting at the base of a pallet or a crate. So if your crate needs to be palleted on a jack or a forklift, if it's a big heavy sculpture, you're going to need to bump it off the ground, and it's got to be a minimum of 3.5 inches for the forks of any kind of pallet jack to fit underneath it. You usually can use 4x4s, which are big wood posts. But again, if it's going international, you can't use solid core lumber, so you can laminate plywood together. And I think there's photos further in the packet here that show that. Glues, I don't do a lot of glue on my woodworking because most crates are meant to come apart easily, and I like to minimize toxic fumes in and within the crate. Sometimes I don't even glue my foam. We'll get to that. It's a debate. But if you're going to use glue and you're going to glue your foams or your wood together, obviously wood glue, regular carpenter's wood glue, Titebond's a great brand, or a high-tack spray mount. I have this stuff, and I forget why I brought it. I was going to show you something real quick. This stuff could work for foam to wood bonding, but there's a better version. There's a 3M makes a 74 all-purpose or a professional strength. It comes out like a web. So it's really thick and it grabs onto the foam and the wood. Bostic or contact cement is another great way to bond foam to your wood. And then you have packing foams and waterproofing, which we'll get to that further on down in the packet. Staples, most crate builders use wide crown staples. This is a basic narrow crown stapler, and this is used in finish carpentry or trim carpentry. This is what I use. But a lot of crate shops will use wide crown, which is used in roofing. That's a whole nother gun and a whole nother set of staples. This will be good for us today and probably everything you do in the future. If you feel if this isn't really holding enough, you can always come in with screws. Do like a 1-inch screw, something very short and minimal. One thing to keep in mind is when we're thinking about making a crate, if we're making our walls and our artwork sitting in here, we want most of our hardware facing out. So we're always, that's why we're assembling it like this, right? So we don't have too many, because when we put this thing together, we're gonna have to have some joints that go inwards towards the other walls. But we wanna minimize how many screws are going towards our artwork on the inside for obvious reasons, right? That and keeping it waterproof, weatherproof. Screws, again, exterior grade is really good to use, regardless of where it's going. You can find those in Home Depot real easy. Exterior grade screws are usually coated somehow. They're painted or they're primed, they're gray. Today I'm just using wood screws, but you have it here. Nuts and bolts, those are for big heavy duty crates. We're not gonna really do that today, but there's many ways to, if you can imagine this guy doubled up, you can put a nut and a bolt that really holds it together. So it's a lot stronger for a bronze sculpture or something. Oz clips or L brackets. I'll go through that in a minute. That's for mounting paintings to the inside of a crate for floating. And then handles. Handles I usually build in with wood. You can also buy various types of inset handles or exterior handles that just screw to the outside. That's an easy way to do it. I don't like that because of what I just said, which is I don't like a lot of screws going in towards the artwork. But in some situations you'll find it's okay. That you can add, like I can put my handle wherever there's a block, so my screw is going to be buried, won't ever pop through. That's real quick basics. And stop me if I'm glossing over anything. There's a lot of information to cover, so I'm hoping to make this comprehensive but easy to understand. Lastly, I guess stickers and stencils to mark your crate. It's usually a good idea to have some kind of fragile indicator, and then always extremely important to have directional arrows. Your crate's gonna have to ride with a bottom, a top, a side. It's gonna have to be facing some direction. Most paintings might not matter if it's riding upside down, but a sculpture, it could be seriously damaged if it's not facing the right direction. You can order these on Amazon. Oh, I know why I brought this. This stuff won't stick to wood, the stickers won't stick to wood that well. I always use a little extra spray mount to keep it adhered. You can also just take a big fat Sharpie marker and draw it on. Or you can get real fancy and make a laser cut stencil. I'm sure the Cedars will have a laser cut machine at some point, and you can have
my studio, so if you need one.
There you go. You got a guy. So you can laser cut your brand, your name, whatever you want, and then fragile. So then the tools you're mostly going to need, the basics, obviously a tape measure, speed or combo square. This isn't super necessary, but I like this combo square because it slides and I can stop it at certain measurements and that can tell me where to put screws and nails and stuff. I can also use this when this is a little wide, but I can cut my foam by hand if I'm not comfortable cutting it on the power tools. Table saw, it's inevitable. You're gonna have to use it. Chop saw, gonna have to use it. And I think we're actually gonna use the bandsaw today as well. It cuts the foam a lot better and easier. Sometimes the chop saws will give you a little bounce. Staple gun, which we just went through. Drills and drivers, obviously for screwing the thing together. We're not doing any bolts, we're gonna put screws into this stuff today. So I use a drill, chuck drill, which will have a countersink bit. So this helps me get my pilot holes going so that I don't split the wood when I'm putting screws through it. And this is an impact driver, which has a ratcheting mechanism, which will help your screws go in and bury themselves. And then possibly, it says possibly bandsaw, jigsaw. The jigsaw would be if we're gonna cavity pack something, or we're going to take this foam and I've got a weird sculpture. Actually what I've got is I need to create this, and then I wanna put a little cavity around it, right? So I cut that out and I can use a jigsaw or a bandsaw to cut my lines. For the sake of time, I don't know if we're gonna cover that, but maybe near the end, if we have time, we can do something weird with the foam and look at that. So those are the basics. Any questions? Nope. Okay. So where to start would be, before I go there, I forgot, router. This isn't super necessary, but I think it's going to help with the safety of your crate and handling. I usually use a roundover bit in a router to run around all my corners, particularly the insides, and this is crucial if you're doing wood handles. Otherwise, this will cut you. The edges of the wood are going to be really sharp. You understand? So what this does, and I'll demo how to use this, it just comes in, spins real fast, and it creates a round edge around everything. It softens up the crate and the wood. It also will keep the wood from getting snagged on something and chipping and splintering, which will happen in shipment, almost guaranteed. So, where to start? Consider what kind of crate you're building and where it is going. Will it be shuttled or shipped? If something's shuttled, what do I mean by that? I mean, when we do a shuttle, we have vans with suspension and we put something in the back of our van and it's climate controlled. It has suspension, not air suspension, but it's got vehicle suspension that isn't so aggressive as a box truck or some UPS guy throwing it in the back of his truck, you know what I mean? We're handling it. So the shuttle, you might be able to get away with less packaging. You might be able to kind of make your crates a little more minimal and save time and money, particularly. Whereas if you're shipping it, and I would say if it was a glass or ceramic piece, even if you're shuttling it, you're gonna wanna consider a little bit more, like spend the money on this polyurethane closed cell foam. Does it need to be pressure packed or floated? So what I mean by floated, pressure packed is what we're gonna do here today with a tiny little sculpture. That's what I'm gonna show you how to do. Floated is, we have a painting and we build a crate that's too big for it and we float it in that crate. So it's not touching the sides so that none of the sides get damaged in transit. Now, there's different ways we can do that. We can put our aluminum Z-bar or wood cleat that's built into the canvas frame, and we can just cleat it into the frame. something to keep in mind, if you're going to do that, you need bracing on the outside of your panel, wherever that painting's going. Because if you need to screw your cleat in the inside of your crate here, your screw is going to pop out of your panel if you don't have a block right there. Does that make sense? Sometimes we pressure fit paintings as well. Sometimes I'll just make something kind of like this, and that painting's just sitting in there. And it's like lightly pressure fit in. Maybe it's wrapped in plastic. Maybe it's framed. Maybe it's in cardboard.
Is it okay if I take some pictures?
Yes, of course, of course. Yeah, if anyone wants to document any of this stuff, go for it. Or me. Okay, so we're gonna jump in here. One more thing before I go on. The box email is on the cover of this handout. So if any of y'all have any questions after this, because there's gonna be kind of a lot, feel free to email box and they'll forward it to me and I can try and field any questions. I'm sure there's people here too that can help you, but I'm more than willing to respond to any questions you might have. So first we're going to break down the types and levels of crates and their materials, and then look at some examples, and then we're going to talk a lot about foam, I guess. So on page 4, this is, I stole this from another company, but this is actually how we operate at Box. I do think this way when I'm giving estimates for people's custom crates. So one-way crates can typically be built with maybe less consideration, you know, like I had mentioned, OSB was used a lot in one-way crates. It's disposable materials, they're gonna throw it away probably or break it down and repurpose it. They're cheaper. And sometimes your client, even if it's really expensive, they don't wanna spend the money, so you have to go cheap and against your advisability or something. But, you know, for one-way crates, we usually do birch plywood. I do sand apply, it's cheap. Cheaper than birch. Non-climate, meaning we're not doing thermal insulation. We'll talk about this when we get to foams. There's different kinds of foams that don't have impact resistance, they have thermal resistance, meaning they keep it fire retardant or they insulate it somehow. They keep the heat in or out. Screw enclosures, no bolts. No interior repacking considerations, meaning I'm not putting this painting in a collar box first and then squeezing it into foam or collar or Oz clipping it or anything. I'm not taking that time. I'm just putting the painting in the crate with some foam, pressure fit. Or vice versa with a sculpture as well. So two-way crates, economy. Again, birch, I probably just use sand apply on all this. Non-climate, screw enclosure, but I will consider interior repacking considerations. We just did one, something like this. It might be more of like a higher end. It was a one-way, but it had to go. Where did that one have to go? It was international. What? It was international. I think it was Cabo. The Cabo crate. Yeah, anyway, it had to go to Cabo. So then we had the slipcase. We had to put the painting in a collar. It was actually like a fragile paper work, and it was three-dimensional. So it had to be collared before I could pressure fit any foam on it because I couldn't touch that surface because it was origami paper that was probably 2 inches thick. So that's what we mean when we talk about interior considerations. You know, it's like, can the surface of your artwork be touched directly by foam and pressurized? If not, then you need to figure out how to float it. And there's various ways to do that. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but what I will point out is the quality one where it says MDO and it's climatized and screw. That's like I'm sending a, you know, I don't know, a Chris O'Feely or a Jackson Pollock or a Damien Hirst. Like I'm sending something that's millions of dollars. So I've got to use MDO and I've got to paint it and I've got to weatherproof it. I've got to run Dartec all along the inside. I have to do all this crazy stuff. I hope none of you don't have to mess with that ever. But you will encounter them, particularly in museums most likely. You'll see a lot of that stuff because there's $1 million artworks. And whoever decided it was $1 million, we don't know, but that's not our problem. So travel crates, and that's what I want to talk about first. So skip page 5, but we'll come back to that. It's a really cool way to talk about how to cavity pack with expandable foam, which I've done one time before. But on page 6, you can see a massive travel frame. A travel frame is a type of crate, and that's why I put it in here, because you could probably get away with this, especially if you're just putting this in the back of your van or your truck or your car, and you just need to get it to Houston or something. This is a great way to save a ton of money and still keep your work pretty safe. So what you're looking at is, I believe, 1x10 slat primed pine that I just bought from Lowe's, and I created a skeletal box that's not completely surfaced, and then I wrapped it in plastic. Or I wrapped it in plastic before I put the slats on it. And that was because if that plastic touches that piece, it's going to hopefully keep it protected. Now, the piece you're looking at is urethane. It's a big plastic sheet. An artist goes to Mexico City, paints urethane on the graffiti walls and peels them back. And so it's this big hanging sheet. So it's really durable, but yet it's still kind of brittle. So it had to hang in this travel frame. And all we were doing was taking it from some big mansion in University Park and bringing it to our storage. So I was like, we'll just do a travel frame. Now, we did have to, at this scale, we had to rent a box truck just for that. But you can make this in any size.
Clint, will you, I think, distinguish the direction of the walls here compared to like a crate? I think the inside versus outside element of that could be helpful.
Sure. So for this, the travel frame is kind of like just this outside. And then I'll put slats over the face. And that's just to protect it should something go, give it some structure. So it's kind of like a float frame around your work, and then you put slats over it. And you can wrap plastic, regular clear plastic, around that frame before you put your slats on to keep it somewhat dust-free and weatherproof. This is a very basic crate. This is not intended for shipment or even shuttling necessarily, unless you're being really cheap. But you could probably get away with it, depending on the artwork. Again, every crate is custom, and it's all so circumstantial, So you're just gonna have to evaluate it as you go. For instance, this. What the heck is this thing, right? Like, this isn't even a crate. Yes, it is. It's a type of crate, right? It's a custom travel crate. I couldn't do too much to touch this piece, but I had to touch it to transport it maybe 3 blocks. So someone had bought this from a collector had bought this from another collector, and we just had to move it about 3-4 blocks within Dallas. So that's why it's so simple, so that I could just take it apart and prop it up in this person's house and install it really easily. But this is a peacock that's made out of thousands probably of little blocks, wood blocks that are all glued together. So it itself is actually fairly strong, but it's heavy and somewhat fragile. So what I did here was I just used some slat woods, and I made a little U that goes around it and attaches to a base, a plywood base that this peacock sits on. And it was all cut just to the size of a furniture dolly, so that we could just roll it out of the house and then put it into our van, take it out of the van, put it on the dolly, roll it into the next house. That foam is a different kind of foam than this that I put in there. And that's because this would be too rigid. It wouldn't actually do anything. I used a type of cushioning foam that's similar to upholstery foam. There's a big spiel in the back here about the differences of foams. And I did that because I wanted that foam to press into all the crazy nooks and crannies of this peacock and just pack it, just hold it there for a few blocks.
Where did you get that?
Yeah,
Where did you get this kind of foam? What did you say?
Kirkland Sales.
Okay.
I'll pass this around when we get to foams.
Okay.
The world of foam is crazy. Okay, next one. These are some of the earliest crates I built. This is a one-way crate. Again, this is urethane, and this was being shipped in the middle of summer. So you see the blue lining on the inside of my wooden crate? That's this type of foam. That's this Owens Corning insulation. It's not even really a foam to me, it's an insulation. Foamular. It's a great product, actually. You could sculpt with it, it's pretty cool. But for crate building, it's only for thermal purposes. It has no impact resistance. Very little, at least. In fact, if anything, it'll transfer it. Like if you bounce on that stuff, it just bounces right back. So it's gonna almost amplify impact, whereas this stuff, boom, dampens it immediately. So never use that for impact, use it for thermal. Now, for me, this was just going to Arlington. This was a commission, so I didn't need to go very far, so I just used bubble. That's bubble, and I always do bubble out. Don't put bubbles directly on your artwork, put bubble out. And if you can avoid it, don't use bubble at all, but sometimes we do. There's not much more to say about this. This was a real down and dirty crate. It was a one-way disposable crate. The next one, on the other hand, this had to go to New York, so this was a considerate piece. It had a tail sticking out that was cast urethane on the sculpture. I wrapped this thing in bubble, and then I built a little prop here. You can see how custom you can get with these sculptures. This is like 1x3 material that allows the tail of the sculpture to float in there. Ideally, I would have used this kind of foam, but maybe a thinner, like a 1-inch in here, but I didn't have it, and I was a poor graduate student, so I didn't buy it. So I used the wrong foam, but I packed it. So what I did, if you look at the next page, and this is only halfway through the packing, I packed it quite a bit so that it would stay stationary, and it didn't move. It was held in that little hole, and then it was pressure fit with all this foam, and I think there was a microfiber cloth in there to clean the chrome. And you can see on the crate, the outside, we have our panel walls, and then we have some framework. This isn't complete, so it's a little difficult to tell, but you see some framework that's kind of mimicking this style. And then this one, this was the crate I was talking about, actually. I think this went to Cabo. So this is a very tall crate. I think it was maybe 8 feet tall by like 6 feet wide. And it was the paper piece. And so if you look on the inside here, I have 2-inch foam ripped down to strips to save material, but I've put it every like 10 inches. The piece actually fits in there, but the piece was wrapped in cardboard, and the cardboard was thicker than the face of the piece. And it had a plastic and then cardboard face around that too. So this thing is pressure fit, but it's like the face can never touch the face of the crate. Hopefully. I mean, it made it there fine, so it worked, but this didn't need to be palleted or jacked, so I didn't really kick it off the ground too much. Sometimes you'll see crates that are just flat. I wouldn't advise against that. I would try and, if you can, always put some sort of base on it, like to kick it up off the ground. This is to prevent it from coming in contact with any kind of moisture or puddling. Especially once it gets out of your hands, you don't know what's going to happen to it. So. Okay, the next page, page 13. I've got a few examples. I think I made 2 of these, and the rest are just from the internet. You can see a type of cavity pack. What I mean by cavity packing is that we're insetting our object, usually this is just for sculptures, into the foam. And so the foam is cut around the sides of our object, and it's holding it in there. Sometimes it's completely immersed in foam, and sometimes it is like this mask. If you can see that small photo there, sometimes it's just like one piece of foam that's like gonna hold it and force it into the crate, stabilize it.
Does the foam reacts a lot to the temperature?
It will, yes. Some
Is
phones.
that consideration when you're wrapping with one piece? Do you make like joint cuts or something?
I haven't seen a lot of that. I'm pretty sure this urethane stuff has very minimal movement. I think some of the other foams will expand and contract. Sometimes you leave a little bit of room. But yeah, you could put some pressure, like some relief cuts in it so that it can move. I think the wood's gonna move faster than the foam, to be honest. This stuff is so chemically rich and so machined that I've never had a problem with it moving. But yeah, I mean, once again, especially if you're climatizing your crate, meaning you're putting a thermal lining around it, the inside shouldn't be exposed to so much temperature fluctuation. Which is why I put that thermal stuff in that one crate to begin with, because it's like August or something, and it was going to be sitting outside for a while. It's really hot. There's a cool sculpture in the very middle that has some wood slats. So whenever we do jobs at Dallas Contemporary, which is kind of how Box began, we were primary installers for DC. I can't tell you how many crates will come in, and they're all like this. So what it is, it's a raw bronze sculpture in a plywood box. It's not even sitting on foam. And it's just got 2x4s with a strip of foam taped to it or glued to it, and they're just screwed in these intervals that stabilize it. So you think about them like armatures or something, and they're supporting the sculpture so that it doesn't move in that crate, particularly with bronze, because you want minimal, you want like as least amount of touching of the surface of bronze, because it can, especially if it's patina, it'd be very fragile, it'd be very like temperamental, I guess we would say. So there's like, we don't want too much plastic on it, we don't want foam touching it 100% because it's an unstable surface. So you'll see a lot of that.
So, for example, I'm sorry, keep interrupting.
No, please ask questions.
For example, with that orange sculpture, is it nailed to the bottom, or is just the pieces of wood preventing it?
The pieces of wood are just screwed from the sides, and they just hold it in there, in place. So it's like we would build our crate. We have the bottom, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sides. We put our piece in there, and then we're putting our braces, like our 2x4s with foam on the inside of them. We're putting them in there, and we're screwing them all around it. And it's kind of a type of exploding crate where it comes, you take it apart, all the pieces have to come apart to get it out. So there's going to be different, that's another great vocabulary for us, is the types of crates. Like top load would be you take the top off and you take the piece out. Side load, you take the side off, that's how the piece comes out. Exploding is all the sides have to come out for you to get to the artwork. Now, technically, they could all be exploding. They should be built that way, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's permanent, these sides, and then this is the only side that comes out, you know what I mean? So, and that's the builder's discretion half the time. So the bottom two here, I would consider them very high-end crates, particularly this one. It's a crate within a crate. I don't know what's in that. I didn't make that. I think I made the one on the right, I believe. I can't remember. But you've got several different layers of foam, and then you've got, a whole nother crate system within that. That's kind of what you're going to see when you unpack your Tracy Emin or your Damien Hirst or your Jeff Koons after you've bought it for your foyer. Crates within crates are really great for ceramic. I think if I've seen any porcelain work or any glass work, it's always a crate within a crate. So if you're making a box with foam lining in it, put it in another box with more foam lining in it, you're just decreasing the amount of impact that can get to it.
What about stainless steel, metal, that nothing has to touch it? How do you work with that kind of?
So what can touch stainless steel? Like nothing with any kind of
Soft fabric?
like a twill, right? So I've seen a stainless steel sculpture we unloaded. This wasn't a DC, I forget where this was. It was in a box, it was a top load. It wasn't very big, it was about this big, but it was a stainless steel tree that someone had welded. and it just had twill wrapped around it and then screwed to the sides. And it was kind of like circled around it like that, and you had a bunch of twill all in the inside of the. It took forever to get it all undone, but that's probably how you would do that. And it was sitting on foam like this on the base. But yeah, that's how you see a lot of twill if you don't want to touch or mar the surface. You can also wrap stuff in Dartec or other types of material that is non-abrasive. It won't do anything to that surface, and that way you can just put it between that and your bracing.
What is twill?
Burlappy,
It's softer than burlap though. It's like it's a fabric, it's a roll of fabric. I think you can get it at like Joann's and stuff. They use it in like dressmaking or something, like a lot of, I think tailors will use it. Trying to think where do we get it? Because there's an art supplier that will sell it. Jerry's probably has it. It's used a lot in the arts as well. But it's a specific type of cloth fabric that's just super soft, but really strong. Yeah. It's almost like a belt. It's like a cloth belt. You can get different sizes too. It's like, I've seen it down to 1/2 inch and then all the way up to like 3 inch. It just comes on a spool. I've never built a crate using twill. I've seen them though, but not very often. I think at this point we have material that we can touch fragile surfaces and it's okay. We have NASA designed fabrics that won't touch our, it won't mar up our, our polished stainless steel and stuff. So.
or the twill, was it like stapled to the inside or how did it?
Screwed. A short little screw, and you would just take your twill and wrap it over itself and then screw through it. Maybe you need to use a washer, but usually we'll get the screw heads that have, they have kind of a built-in washer with them. They're flathead. It's not a pan screw, but it's a type of screw. That would be good for that, we'll see. Commonly used woods, again, birch, OSB, MDO, kiln-dried pine, 4x4. Now we're getting into foams. Typical packing foams for the cushioning of crates are ethofoam and urethane. In both cases, and I didn't write this, by the way, but this is like a really, really great breakdown of what the foams do and how we should think about them. In both cases, the foam acts as a shock absorber versus a spring, like upholstery foam. If indented, it slowly comes back up to full thickness rather than immediately bouncing back. So ethofoam polyethylene is closed cell with a high load carrying capacity. It's high durability and is virtually chemically inert. For this reason, it is often preferred for storage use, mount making, etc. This foam is typically white and may be used commercially on high-end heavy electronics, molded or cut to shape. Urethane, ester polyurethane or polyester urethane foam is open-celled with a softer feel, lower load-bearing capacity, and due to its physical structure, better at absorbing vibration. This type of foam, typically dark gray, is typically used in camera cases and in egg crate configurations such as sound insulation. So that's what I had used on the Peacock, was a type of urethane foam that was softer, almost like it's on the inside there. It's black, and it's the kind of stuff, like they said, that you see on the egg crate foam. It's soundproofing, but it also has a spongy quality to it. It's not, in my mind, very great to just put an object on that and then build a box around it and send it out. This is better for that, which is the other type, polyethylene. Upholstery foam, which is very similar to the urethane. This is going to be kind of confusing, guys, I'm sorry, but at least you have it written down so you can always refer to it. Which is distinguished by and undesirable for its springiness, is also undesirable for its chemistry. Look at all this great stuff we have here.
More foam.
More foam. Oh yeah, this stuff is real spongy. Let's hand it, let's pass it around and feel it.
So this one is the which is urethane.
pass that around too. And this one. Yep. I saw this too.
Oh, yeah, you have like full on styrofoam.
Yeah.
And then there's the pink foam stuff.
Mind if I
Go for it.
pass these around? And then we can look at these too.
Oh, yep.
So styrofoam, the one thing. Yes.
Is that foam?
Yep.
Even though it's dark gray.
No, this stuff is typically white.
Oh, okay.
I buy it black because I had a bunch of this black stuff from a sculpture I packed up where I didn't want white. The black is good because it won't get dirty.
Right.
White is, I mean, I've never seen black mar any surface or any of the black come off on anything, but you typically see white. You can use both.
And this is IFA foam as well. Did you say front
I think so, yeah. It's confusing. There's different thicknesses and like hardnesses and densities to these as well. Now, I do this a lot, and I'm still always asking my supplier questions constantly because I forget, and there's too many different types of foams. So I'm going to pass this around. I think I put a link. I put a link at the back. Kirkland Supply is where I go. There are other suppliers in the design district I have not tried out. But yeah, this will tell you polystyrene and styrofoam. That's another thing. Styrofoam, I never use it. Never use it for art. It's too, it'll break apart on you. It doesn't have as good shock absorption as this stuff. Yeah, I mean, it'll probably get your TV from the store to your house. That's why they use it there. It's cheaper. But this is good for art.
Maybe like a laundry travel.
Yeah, so you can hand that out. I kind of want that back, but if you go to Kirkland, they'll give you those for free. And then we've got this great stuff down here. Oh, yeah, so the styrofoam, what goes along with that is the USG pink board and the Dow blue board. It's what I was talking about earlier. It's thermal rather than impact resistant. The one thing, I'm going to kind of gloss over this, but this guy breaks this down, and he's saying about the damage that occurs to paintings. They receive, it has been determined that damage occurs to a painting or object when they receive a shock in excess of 50 Gs. And he says, to put that in perspective, wrapping a pen on a desk results in a 20 G shock. 50 Gs ain't that much more than that, right? So, you know, damage can occur when you're hitting that if you're not using the right foam. And what I like is then he comes here, a minimum thickness of 2 inch of packing foam is required. I rarely go thinner than this. This is the 2 inch foam from Kirkland. And they sell this in 4x8 and I believe 5x10. They might have some other sizes too.
Yes.
Of this, yeah, it's a full sheet. I think they'll cut it down for you if you don't have a van or a truck. You need to get it into your car. Like they might cut it for you. I don't know if they charge you, but it's sold in the sheets like plywood.
So as long as you get 2 inches, you can fold it in half and it won't break in half.
Yeah, this stuff's not really gonna snap very easily. And you can also bring a knife with you and just score it and cut it down by hand and save some money. Throw it in your car. There's another brilliant thing. This Uline has started. I don't know when they came out with this, and I've never actually used it, but I keep wanting to. They have this pick and pack foam stuff, and I know everyone hates Uline politically, but that's a pretty awesome little guy to have. Like, you want to put your sculpture on there, it's already pre-cut. Now, technically, you could do this in here. You could set up your table saw and just pass this through the table saw at intervals and make a grid cut, and then probably pull that foam out. I don't know this stuff. This is that other type of foam that's going to pull out a little easier, but it's a block and it doesn't have anything out of it yet. You just pick it. You pick the cubes out around your sculpture or your object.
Can you carve it yourself as you can do the foam?
This stuff?
Color?
This stuff?
Yeah.
I believe so. But I couldn't tell you.
Or this kind of foam, for example. If you use, I mean, you know the tools to carve the pink stuff, the pink thermal one, can be used on this kind of foam to carve, you know.
Like a hot knife?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, or a hot wire? Yeah, I've used it on this stuff a lot. Those are, I mean, we don't have those. I doubt any shop has them really. But you could go, I know Harbor Freight has a hot knife, and it's just a big knife, and it'll cut right through this. And then there's a hot wire tool. It looks like a hacksaw, and it just cuts right through this. Those are very dangerous, though. I mean, you can do it on a bandsaw real easily. That's my favorite tool to cut this stuff, but I didn't know if y'all even had one. All right, let's take a quick break.